Right, Mark Goldbridge, welcome. Straight off the bat, we may as well address the elephant in the room. Mark Goldbridge, Brent.
If you want to be the first show that calls me Brent, that's fine, Paul.
Is it? How is it possible that? So what? So Brent. What's the D'Souza?
De Cesare.
De Cesare. How is it possible that you have created a name that sounds less made up than your real name?
I suppose it's the result of having an Italian stepfather, really. That I've got quite a good name. I like it. It's a good, very, very good name. But it
sounds like if I was making myself in Champ Manager,
yeah,
that's the kind of name I'd go for.
And I do use that over, with no prying eyes on Football Manager. I am Brent De Cesare, not Mark Goldbridge. It is a better name. But yeah, as I've said before, it's not some master plan to take over the world with some ultra ego. It literally is because when I came into this world, I was in jobs that professionally would not have allowed me to identify my proper name. So it started off as a 5-minute what name shall we use, and then it's sort of become what it is.
Can you remember any of the alternatives?
I think Silverbridge definitely was one. So yeah, but God, we're talking 5 years ago now. It's funny because Mark is such a nondescript name. Sorry, any Marks out there, but it just seems to work. It's work. I know. It's a bit like the old Batfink thing, isn't it? It gives you that shield, which I think we all need sometimes in this social media world.
It's a phenomenal reference to drop in so very early. Yeah. I feel like we're going to get on famously there. How do you think that's had an impact though? Because even a cursory look into it, like there's a Vice article, there's an article on Vice dedicated to you being a bit of a character, like a fabrication. How do you feel about that? Is that something? Do you look at that and go, brilliant, job done, or do you feel like that's something that hampers what you do in terms of credibility or whatever? Because you're not the first person. The Ringo Starr made a career out of. He wasn't born Ringo. People do this. Famous actors do this kind of stuff all the time.
Elton John.
It feels like that's one of the major hurdles that you've had to overcome in this. Is it you've got to be taken. Football's a very difficult business to be taken seriously in.
Yeah, and I don't think I am still taking that seriously. But obviously, I think in this chat you'll be jumping in with as much as me because you've experienced a lot of it. What I'm going to say, but I think with the name thing and the taking seriously, it's like with the Vice article in particular, I'm lucky that I've got people, family and friends, some friends who do this with me that have always been very, very good sort of shoulders to not cry on but sort of lean on at times. And I think the Vice article, my initial reaction was probably what I was like when I first came into it. I was like, who are these? It's all lies. What do I do? Where's my solicitor? Yeah. And then people are like, well, actually, what damage is it going to do? You've got such a following now where people will already know that story and know it's nonsense, and the people who don't will give it time and they'll and it's also about focusing on the good people, isn't it? There's bad people no matter what you do. So but I think around that, I think the phenomenon was it blew up a bit last summer with some of the memes that were going around. So I think people come new to it and they go, what is this? It's got to be a joke. It's got to be parody. Oh, there's another clip of him. And what they don't realise is that clip might be 10 seconds from a week's filming of about 15 hours. Yeah. And also, if you go back 4 years, you might find another 10 seconds. Yeah. So I understand why people with fresh eyes come to it and go, oh, it's parody, it's a joke and everything like that. Because to be fair, I probably would if I was new to it. But obviously the truth is the history of it.
So how did you cope with that? Because it feels like you've crossed over now. I feel like you've reached the point where, and I think this happens in football, like you've just got to be around for long enough to be kind of accepted. But I know when we started out, initially, I think a bunch of Evertonians jumped on some of our very early videos, and like the abuse was horrendous. And I think I turned comments off on early videos, and I really struggled with it because you start thinking there's more people who don't like me watching this than there are people who do. What was that like? If you shared that experience, people might have loved you from the start, and this is just me saying that everyone thought I was a gobshite.
It's funny because my middle child's daughter, she's sort of getting to that age now where she's into football and she's into YouTube and she watches a lot of YouTube, and she was like, "Have you ever done a video, Daddy, where more people disliked it than liked it?" And I went, "Many videos in the early days." So and I think that's all part of the journey, isn't it? It's part of the journey that when you do come into this world, don't take yourself too seriously if people like you or dislike you, because there will be that journey along the road. And I mean, you know, even my relationship and the United Stands relationship with other YouTubers has changed, and I think that I wouldn't change any of that.
It feels like there used to be a very combative, the United scene in particular, because it's a very odd place. We you know, I know most of the people involved in it, and there's never been there's a battle for legitimacy there, and some of that comes from being from Manchester, some of it comes from who owns certain channel and what have you. But that was how I first became aware of you, was fallings out with Full-Time Devils and what have you.
Yeah, and I think it's how you approach it, isn't it? Because those things still do happen now, and people will message me and say, what do you think? And like, we had something with a fan cam last night, and I'm like, we just don't say anything. We just keep doing our thing and focusing on us. Whereas I think 3 years ago, I'd have been right. Here we go. And it's that experience and learning. Look, competition's fine. Manchester United, Liverpool, it's a competition. Football's a competition. Life's a competition. And I don't mind that. I don't mind the fact that people go head to head. But what I think becomes the issue is when you start to feel a level of injustice because people are spreading lies about you and this, that and the other, which is all part of it. But ultimately, it's the learning process that I've been through that has put me, I think, in the last sort of 6 months to a year in a different place where I'm just sort of like comfortable in my own skin, what I'm doing and the content I'm putting out. And going back to what I said before, some people are going to hate it, some people are going to like it. Do I need to worry about whether people hate it? No, I don't. But I think I probably spent a lot of time where I was.
It's tough, isn't it? Because I think the problem with football, and it's why I got into this space, people take everything too seriously in football. And bearing in mind that Liverpool's greatest manager said it's not a matter of life or death, it's more important than that, you know, which is a wonderful quote. But the actual stone cold reality of it is that it's very easy to get people's backs up, and I think there's a game that can be played around that, which we maybe touch on. But it feels like there's people who you've maybe rubbed up against, don't like that you. They either believe that you're doing it as a piss take, or that you're not taking it seriously. And when you come into, what's it like when you come into contact? Because there's obvious names, you know, you've had fallings out with Steve Howson, you've had fallings out with DT, both guys who wear the hearts on the sleeves. Is that just a natural sort of chemical combustion there, or?
I think what it is that some people are just a personality, and I'm a firm believer in second chances. And all these people, if I was in a room with them, a lot of people ask, if you were in a room with them now, what happens? And I'm like, look, I've got a background where I can look after myself, but that's not who I am. I would say let's sit down first and try and sort it out. But I think some people have an inability to differentiate banter, between, look, let's be honest, if we talk about DT for a moment, he takes something to a level that he shouldn't take it to. Mm-hmm. I feel sorry for him in a way. It's not about calling him names or anything like that. You lose a football match, someone says they put you in a pocket. That was something you had when you were 6 years old playing World Cup. Yeah. Deal with it. Just take it, or come back with something better, or get on with it. But don't go. Well, do what you like. But if you go personal and you start mentioning families and people like that, everyone's got a limit. And for me, that particularly has gone too far. So it's like I remove myself. I've blocked him. Yeah. I remove myself from that arena. If we have a conversation and we sort it out and you promise not to do it again, let's go back into the banter arena of what football's all about.
It feels like with that stuff, because I think there's a lot of people who probably, from outside, who probably view yourself and DT as on a similar kind of thing, because they can't there's people who don't fathom how you can be a certain way around the football. And it feels like at times with Twitter has become a bit like to use a wrestling parlance, it's a bit of a work. It's a bit like people put these fronts on. And that's what I thought looking at the thing with you and DT. It looked on social media like if you had WWE at the end of your names, I'd go, this is brilliant, but it's brilliantly orchestrated.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No, it does get answered a lot. And we were talking about, because I know you did the video on Robbie and the True Geordie and that thing. And it was one of the first things I asked them, and they won't mind me asking about this, both of them. Oh, is this pantomime because you're going to have a football match? And it's like, well, yeah, potentially it could have been that, but actually it's delved into something a little bit deeper.
The football on YouTube stuff I think is really interesting. I've seen the good side of it and I've seen the negative side of it. For every #United, I am so envious of what Spencer's created there. He's almost living the dream. I used to create your own football clubs on Champ Manager, Football Manager, old school FIFA and all that kind of stuff. And he's literally got to do it. But then I see the other side of it, and DT's actually a bit at the heart of this. When we played #for Ball Street, I could see that he had that in him there, and he was like, it was trying to start fights with people and what have you. And then when you see that stuff, when you see the falling out with yourself and him, my issue with it, and this is where a touch of hypocrisy, because I go on about I don't like taking things too seriously, but I actually do take a 1 hour industry to be taken seriously. When I see that worries me, because I think there's a real negative perception that follows that kind of thing, and I think people have a negative perception, football fans, and people have a negative perception therefore of our industry, of it just being a bunch of thugs or just being loud mouths and what have you. So personally, I didn't think it looked great what happened with the 2 years, but it was handbags at dawn, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, the game itself was, for us, we turned up like half an hour before with a bunch of people who we'd never met and just said, let's just go out and try and play against a team that's trying to build something maybe hashtag orientated with people who are training and playing games. And obviously DT was doing little videos on his way down about this, that and the other, and obviously winding himself up more than anybody else was. They were trying to get me on camera before to say, we're going to win this, we're going to get that. And there isn't any video footage of me, because I'm just like, no, I'm not that stupid. Like, yeah. We've turned up, we're going to play a game of football, and actually we're probably going to lose. Yeah. Obviously it went a different way. We were 3-1 up with 44 minutes to go, and they'd had 2 men sent off. But the way that, I would agree, I think it was embarrassing the way it was dealt with. I mean, ultimately, there was a tackle there. I'm not going to lie, as a footballer, I always was quite petulant. I grew up with Roy Keane as my idol. Yeah. There was a little bit of a dig there, but I'd just been fouled, and maybe I should have been sent off. And if I had, I wouldn't have reacted the way some other people did. So I just think that just goes back to, how some people conduct themselves in this genre that we're fortunate enough to work in. And I think that I think Flex said it after the game, you are a role model, whether you like it or not, whether you should be or not. And if you can't deal with things when you're at your height of your sort of passion, then maybe you're going to get that negativity.
Yeah, well, because I guess it kind of leads in terms of the channels themselves. United Stands flying, absolutely flying. At the time of recording, you're well over 300,000 to 350, 60 something.
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. Like I don't check ours every day. But it's it feels there's a real split on that channel, isn't there, really? And you've got the content that you're making, which is obviously a lot of it's the live stuff. You've got your watch alongs and what have you, and then you've got a lot of the post match content, the fan cams and stuff. Where'd you fall down on it? Because to be fair, both types of content I've seen held up by other people, for in negative light, in positive light. My feeling is, and I think it pulls out of this notion of negativity around the industry, the fan cam stuff is a very fine line to tread between giving fans a genuine voice and making content that is fundamentally for fans of other football clubs.
You know what? I mean, I think, look, my persona, especially from what people see on the United stand, is I love football. I'm very passionate about it. It doesn't end with United. I did England stuff in the summer. I'll be watching Liverpool when they're playing Bayern Munich, both legs, because I like big football. That's my passion. But I do like comedy as well. And one of my favourite comedies is The Office. Yeah. And I think that sort of, I do agree with you. We've had some fan cams where it's been like, we've just beaten Newcastle and someone's ranting, and it's like, but then something else kicks in where I just think it's very interesting to observe the human psyche. And I think that the United stand is definitely a Manchester United fan channel, but I think it's also an observation of people as well. Yeah. And I think people feel a part of that. And I know we pull in people from who are not United fans, and I'm not comfortable with it. I'm sure you'd be the same with Redmen TV, because I don't want to lose. I want to win. Yeah. I think there is a fine line, and I think we're fully aware of it. And I know some people choose not to go into it, and I respect that. And I know some people jump in with both feet and absolutely embrace it. I think as a channel, we will have videos out there that sometimes people are not going to like, but it's certainly not what we want to be. And I think it is a part of it. And you're right. I think you've got to manage it carefully. I was saying to Chris off camera, actually, if you are thinking of doing a fan channel, you don't want to build your content off a fan cam getting you 300,000 subscribers, because you're gonna sink. You're gonna have a disproportionate subscribers to your viewers. You want, whatever your core thing is, that's where you want to be building your audience, and the United stand does that. So I'm comfortable with it at the moment, but it's certainly something that we're aware of.
It's tough, isn't it? Because obviously United have gone through a period of transition. I mean, United the United that it's existed since United Stand came about is not the Man United that you've grown up on.
No,
that I've grown up on. And then the biggest criticism levelled at fan channels is that capitalising into gaining financial gain from the misery of your football club, and that's where it is again a very, very difficult line to tread, because has this been, going back to stuff we were talking about earlier, is this been a hard thing again in terms of earning your legitimacy? Because you come in, you're not from Manchester, you've not got a thick Mancunian accent to back you up, and now all of a sudden you're sending people to the match ostensibly looking almost, it might appear as though they're out there looking for that content, because they're the things that does go pop on the channel.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, we've had one or two videos that have done well off the fan cams, but the biggest videos, without blowing my own trumpet, would be the ones with me or a studio based, I suppose, or a mum's bedroom, or whatever people think it is. And that is consistently the biggest. There's one or two where it's gone big, and I'm not comfortable with that, because I know that that's not sustainable for where I want the channel to go. I think you're right about the non-Manchester thing, and that's something I'm personally very passionate about, because I lived that whole all my life. You're not from Manchester, and there's a very valid story, but you can't be somebody who gives out banter and then not take it. And I know that in the main, the people who are mocking me about that, I just do it to get a rise out of me, and that's fine.
It's an easy thing to poke at.
It is, but the much like yourselves, we were speaking about this as well. The United Stand, I had a job. That's why the name's different to that, because I had to have a different name. And the hardest years were spent doing that with a family and a job in your own time, working it up. There are fan channels out there that, historically were set up by media companies. There's nothing wrong with that. I've never said there is a problem with that, but they maybe had that financial backing at the start. So
my problem with that though is not necessarily, there's nothing to say that people well, look, we're talking about Full-Time Devils, by the way, and there was numerous other ones, and there was Blue Moon Rising,
Football Republic,
on Football
Chelsea, something.
Chelsea. The issue was never the people on those channels, but it was the people leading the content, and that's where, again, that's what I do get serious about it, is that there's clearly a way to make money out of this space. There's a way to make a fast buck, and that is, and it's not as simple as take a camera and stand outside a football ground, because you could interview 50 people, and you can interview 50 people a week for 10 weeks, and you might not get anyone who does that.
Definitely.
But that quest for legitimacy has been a big thing in that regard. And I don't know. What was it? I'm always interested to know, what were your motivations in getting into it? Because I think it was, according to the YouTube channel, it was summer of 2014 when the channel was set up.
Yeah, which would have been that fits in with the. I always wonder whether it was the Euros or the World Cup. So it would have been a World Cup. Went on holiday to Mallorca. Thought England would still be in the World Cup. They weren't. Thought I'd be spending evenings watching England in the World Cup. I wasn't. So sort of lunchtime on a Lilo, thinking about football and thinking, you know what, I want to do. I'm fed up of media scripted nonsense. I saw it last night with the United game, and I just think, I respect it. It's what I grew up on, but I don't relate to a lot of their opinions. Ex-footballers, polished presenters, what you get given, I don't like it. I've grown up with chats in pubs at school, and that's what I like. Forums. And I was like, there's got to be something out there. And now, funnily enough, there probably was. Yours was one of the first, but I didn't watch YouTube. Yeah. So I went into it from that with this firm commitment that I was just going to go on and talk about the way I've always spoken about football. And it wasn't an easy journey. Mm-hmm. I mean, it looks like it is now, but it wasn't at the start. It wasn't received that well, but it was just about being genuine. Whenever I go live, I never have a piece of paper in front of me. I'll have one or two things I want to talk about, and I'll see where the conversation goes. Because I could talk about United or football for 12 hours, easily. I'm sure you could as well.
Absolutely.
And that was as simply as it was. I mean, it's not that simple. We all know it's not that simple. There's a hell of a lot of stuff that goes in behind it. But actually, it was just, that was the one simple thing, was to be a fan of this football club and talk about it like a football fan and see if it rolls. And it's got there in the end, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because you said the piece of paper in front of you thing. Now, I know we've had a conversation in the past, not necessarily in terms of topics of conversation, but in handling trolls early on. I remember you saying that you would, because it's something that's very difficult to fathom until you do it. It is quite easy to get flustered by people throwing stuff your way and whatever. Yeah, but you used to, I think I have to phrase it, not pre-prepare, but you used to think about comebacks and stuff like that. I remember you telling me back in the day, because you wanted to be able to keep your flow going or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's like the old comedian, isn't it? If somebody heckles you, it's having a response to that, because hands up, it's been a learning process. I've done a lot of things in my life, but I've never been a YouTuber before. And it's funny, when I was on the True Geordie the other week, I said, I made a lot of mistakes when I first came into it, and there's a lot of good people that probably are riled that I didn't, including him. And he said, do you not think that's a little bit immature for a man in his 30s? I said, yes, it is, but I live my life by every day's a school day, and I've never been a YouTuber before, so of course I'm still going to make mistakes if I go into something else that I've never done before. So, and I used to see a comment in the live comments, and it would just be like a prick, and it would hurt, and I would go, and that was it, you're riled. And that, if people wanted to, they'd find videos of me doing that. Whereas now, I'd just be like, if I give you anything, you've achieved it. And it's like, fine, you remove them from the comments, or you ignore the live comments. And
muting comments has been a game changer for me on that, because I don't like the satisfaction that blocking people gives them, because you're giving them content when you do that. You're giving them a screenshot, and you're giving them something to move on. And I think I have a slightly different experience, largely than you seem to do, I guess, on the social media kind of things. I don't get too much bother by and large, but you do get it, and it's problem developing a thick skin. I think it's common advice, but it's very difficult advice to live up to, and it's something I've always struggled with in that regard. I mean, what's that? At your lowest points of that, you must think, what's the point? What am I doing it for?
It's quite ironic, because I'd say Liverpool supporters are probably the biggest help to me, and they probably don't like that because they were the biggest offenders. And I think it hit a crescendo last summer where there was a lot of nonsense being thrown around, and nonsense would be appropriate, which doesn't bother me. That doesn't, names don't bother me, but it was becoming, I think, when there's a certain sort of movement against you that you feel is unfair, you've got to sort of look at yourself and see, well, I've obviously contributed to that. It's not all just because people are spreading lies, which is part of it, but also look at the way you're conveying yourself on Twitter and everything like that. And I looked at it, I thought, actually, you do rile everybody except for United fans. And I looked at it and I was like, well, if this is my low point, this is my low point. And I was thinking of coming off Twitter, and I was getting advice to come off it, and I was like, I don't like bullies, I don't like quitting. So how do you look at this? And the thing I got to, and I say it a lot, is rivals are good, but rivals don't need to be enemies. And I looked at the United specifics, and I thought, if you just tweet negative about every other club and positive about United, what does that do for you? Because you could have a Liverpool fan who is the best bloke in the world, and you're going to wind him up just because he supports Liverpool. I know there are United fans out there who are vile, but they support my club. You need to learn from that, and that's what I did. So I will still wind Liverpool fans up, and I will still wind Chelsea fans up and everything like that, but it's not about doing it for any sort of hate or anything like that, which I think I probably did fall into that trap.
I think you see a lot of you find a lot of people. Let's use Donald Trump as the ultimate example of this. People who there's a mentality, I think, and people pull the shutters down when they start getting loads of hate and abuse, and there's a delusion that comes with it, and I think maybe it's like you're saving yourself to some self-protection, self-preservation. Well, they're all bellends, and my saying's always be, if you reach a point where you think everyone else is a bellend apart from you, odds are you're the bellend.
Exactly.
And I think we see that, and let's not go specific. There's no sense in going to specific names on it, because we all know the names. There's people who, again, exist within our sphere, and they are constantly receiving abuse, and some of it goes too far. But you're right. I think I always would. You have to look at it. I think you do. You have to look at it and go, is it maybe me? Now, question though, does that make you more disingenuous in that regard? Is that are you therefore putting content out there that is the same, but it's done to specifically avoid that, or are you doing that because you?
I think it's a great question, because, and I would answer it and say, I could easily double my followers easily on Twitter by saying certain things. I know what to do, because if you're in it long enough,
Hazard's amazing.
Yeah, you know. Well, yeah, you know what works. You know, you know what works. And Arsenal have got a massive fan base, and I could very easily switch a switch and say, I don't like Arsenal because DT's the face of your channel and he's an idiot. And Arsenal fans would go, you know what? Not all of them, but they would go, yeah, he's right. I don't do that. It's one of the reasons, but actually, I think you're a bit of a banter club. So I exclude Arsenal fans from liking me, but although some will follow. So no, I think what it is I actually looked at it properly and was like, you know, do you actually hate all these clubs and have no respect for them at all? Well, no, that's not the case, because you are going to sit and watch Liverpool Bayern Munich. You are going to watch Spurs play Dortmund. You actually do quite like Pochettino. You do respect Klopp, even though he's managing a club that you don't like. That's the truth. Yeah. So I think if you stick to the real you, and when you do want to go in on something, just do it. Yeah. And if it backfires, it backfires. But at least you're being truthful.
The thing, this is the problem with social media. It's so immediate. Is that it's very easy now to put things, just something out there in the heat of the moment. People very rarely delete things off the back in when they've calmed down in the cool of a day. And of course, once you become a figure, though, and you'll have seen this more than most, is once you've committed something to being out there. People are stockpiling this stuff now. Yeah. People are ready for it. They're going, cool, that'll come in handy. I'll get that ready for whatever. Does that ever? Do you find yourself caveating stuff a lot more, knowing that what you say could well be used as ammunition down the line?
I think there is so much stuff there, and I think if somebody wanted to look at your content, they could find a snippet that would be totally taken out of context and used. And I think if you start tailoring your content, you've almost got to go through back everything you've ever done and start using the old private button or something like that. So look, I think because of the way I do it, there is sort of that self-mocking anyway. You know, I don't take myself too seriously. I really take my football opinion seriously, and I think it is right, like everybody else does, but not to the extent that I'm like, you're wrong, I'm right, you know, I'm going to be totally right about this, because that's when you are going to get mocked. There is stuff where people will mock me, of course there is, but a lot of it, there's stuff that people put out there, and I laugh at it myself, and I think, yeah, they're making me look like a complete plonker, but actually, fair play, it's well edited.
I guess there's probably a degree to which, you know, if you working behind the pseudonym as well, there's a degree to which, when I say you created a character, I'm not saying that you are acting in what you do per se, but there is a degree to which if it's not coming back on your name, it's not dropping on your doorstep in quite the same way, then there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously,
if everyone's going to call you a nonce, then that's different, of course.
But look, I'm not going to lie and say that when you go live on a camera, you maybe hype it up 20%. My voice is very different on camera to what it is when I'm more relaxed, because you're an entertainer at the end of the day. Yeah. Am I an entertainer to such an extent that I'm a fake character? Well, clearly that's not the case. But to repeat it, I think it really is just about being yourself, but also not taking yourself too seriously. Yeah. I think if you do those two things, they work quite well for me.
What do you think? I think it's fascinating, the world that we inhabit in terms of the social media and the reaction to football, because I think there's a generation now growing up and they don't understand that the banter isn't something that should be deadly serious. Like, I remember moving away to university, and every conversation I had with another lad was football related. You know, it was one of those things where you go to the first freshers nights, and the gents bogs in the university being massive, and it was a circle of lads stood around, careful, but you know, where you from? Oh, Chesterfield. And where you from? Oh, I support Aston Villa. And having a mad positive conversation. You wouldn't believe that actually genuinely exists, given the reactions to things online.
Yeah, you know what, it's right. I mean, I remember going to like weddings and stuff, and you don't know anyone because it's your wife's friends, and then, you know, you pop outside, maybe have a cigarette. I don't smoke anymore, but I used to, and it's just how it starts, I don't know, but then they're your mate for the rest of the night, and you just chat, and it doesn't matter whether they're an Arsenal fan, because you've got that universal thing, which is football, which actually goes back to probably what I was talking about in the summer. Why are you being such a twat to everybody who's non-United fans? Because actually, you know, I live in Birmingham at the moment. A lot of people support Villa. I'll go into work on a Monday morning and chat 2 hours about Villa. I don't watch Villa, but it's very easy football's very easy to get into somebody because the strands are always the same. The manager, your star player's not performing, or he is performing, and you can relate to it very, very quickly without actually knowing loads about that specific football club. So football's I love football. Yeah.
Well, moving forward, then, where do you sort of see it? Where's the future of United? And I know you've actually got a few channels. You're looking at probably close to 500,000 subscribers across 3 channels, which is phenomenal. You've started to kind of, I guess, take that, is it the magic bullet or whatever it is, and move it over to that football. Yeah, is it that's right, isn't it? How do you see that going? Where do you see the future? What's 5 years? What's 10 years? Or do you even think that far ahead?
I think it's such a dynamic and interesting arena that I always say to people, I don't know whether I'll still be doing it in a year, and that's not because I don't want to. You just never know. Never take it for granted. Which is, I think, anything that's good, you shouldn't do that. The That's Football thing is really just a hobby that it's like. That's where I play my FIFA. That's where I do my Football Manager. That's where I'll maybe do the odd watch along for a game that I'm going to watch, and I'll think, look, I'm on my own tonight. Let's do that. So that's just a nice little trickle along, really. The United Stand, I'd love it to just keep growing. I mean, I see the United Stand as the sort of modern fanzine. There have been fanzines for United. United We Stand, Barney Red News, Red Issue, which was very hard hitting. I wouldn't want to be like that, but I do think that they are the modern fanzine in many ways, where they're not intertwined with the club and they offer that up. But I mean, I'd throw it back to you as well. I mean, I don't know. I genuinely don't know the answer. I like what I do, and there's a lot of other things I would like to do, but it is very time consuming anyway. I mean, you're flat out all the time, just maintaining what you do.
It's the thing that doesn't get it. I said this on a video the other day. No sympathy once again, because I've chosen to do this. Yeah. But you're right. It's a full time. It's a full time job. To paraphrase, but it's a fun job, but it's still a job, and all the stuff that goes along with it. It's you're right. I've said so many times down the years, I think this will be my last season doing it. I think this will be my last season, and it's every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. I throw as many quotes and references in here as possible. But there's a very addictive quality to it, isn't it? To building a channel like the YouTube Creator app. That's one of the first things I check in the morning, see what the subscribers are doing, see what people are commenting, see whatever, reply to a few bits and pieces. Same with Twitter. How's that? You put something out. I put something generic out. How's that performed? You develop. I think you develop a different mindset when you get into that world. You become very numbers driven and very analytics, and that's a tough balance between from what went from being a bunch of lads and a bunch of mates sat in a room just chatting shit about football with a camera and no lights pointing at us, and it was awful, to being kind of where we are. I mean, what's for you personally? I guess, is that sustainability? Is it looking to make it a bigger company? Is it or could you again what happens if it's this is it? You're committed then to being the man who sits in front of a green screen and watching United matches for the next 20 years.
It is interesting because I think in some ways it's what more can you bring, but you always find something else. I mean, we were talking before, I like this sort of thing. I'm not afraid to say, I think sometimes we're all a little bit humble and like, oh no, I'm not the star. It's well, actually you are the star, because and people are very interested. If I do a Q&A on Twitter, the amount of questions will be about your background, what was your job, this, that and the other. Well, people are interested in that, and that's why I think these things are interesting. No, I don't think any of us go into it, well, some people do, but don't go into it to be the star. Yeah. That sort of, you are the star because you're the presenter, and I like this sort of thing. I like wandering away from football a little bit. I like talking about topical things, not political. I think that's a mistake, but topical things I do like. So, and I think that's
the trap I fall into all the time.
Yeah, but I think it's about what makes me want to keep doing it is that I enjoy it, and I think the minute you stop enjoying it, I'll move on to something else. That's what I've always been like. The minute I stop enjoying it, I'll be like.
I think it's a common pitfall, and I've seen lots of people try and fall down. This is not me talking as like I'm not a big YouTuber per se. There's plenty of people doing it far bigger and far better than we've ever done it. But I remember initially saying, we're going to do this, and people saying, well, why, or who's going to watch that? And I said, we're going to do it because we're going to have fun doing it, and if we have fun doing it and we enjoy doing it, then it'll be fine. And there's so many. I think there's a lot of easy wins down the road that I've swerved because like a couple of times I've tried FIFA content and you're proof it works. People are interested in it.
Crap, that's the new angle. Be crap at FIFA.
Be crap at it, and I've tried that certainly. But I don't enjoy playing it, so I can't commit to doing those side of things. But I think there's a lot of people who look at what gets done and they look at you and they look at what we do and look at whatever and go, oh, piece of piss, dead easy. But you've got to be, there's a lot, the biggest pitfall isn't it, is making stuff that you can't, on your darkest day, you've still got to be able to pick yourself up, get in front of camera and go.
You know what, I think it's an interesting point. I think we're quite similar in this. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, if you look at somebody who goes onto a channel that's already big, maybe does a fan cam, and I'm actually not talking about that person here, although I know what people will think. You go on a fan cam on a channel that's already established, or you go on a show that's already established because it's got backing from a TV company or whatever. See, I'm trying to mold a few there so people don't know who I'm talking about. And then, because you're good at that, to be fair, you then go off and do your own thing and you're big and everything like that. That's great. But you're never going to have the journey we've had where you've started off with nothing. Yeah. You've had to do one show a week in your spare time and you build it and you build it and you build it. I think you become a more relaxed and more pragmatic and more focused on what's important because, the success is great, but I did this with no success. Yeah. Whereas there are some people who I think become a little bit wrapped up in it, wrapped up in the views, a little bit, I've got to be the star because they were dropped in and it just blew up very, very quickly where organic growth is the growth that everyone always wants. Yeah. But actually, I think both our channels have had that, and I think it stands you in good stead. But to do that, you've got to be thick-skinned. You've got to work hard, and you've got to be patient as well. Yeah,
I think I've seen it again. I remember the early days of Redmen and seeing someone show me a comment on a Liverpool forum, and it was probably about 2 years maybe into us doing it. So I'm saying, have you seen this thing, this Redmen TV? We're going to do this and we're going to do it bigger and better. And I was sat, as I had been for 5 days straight, basically unwashed in front of a laptop screen, trying to edit videos together, saying fair fucks to you, good luck. Yeah. Good luck, because if you can do that, then absolutely fair play. I think you're right. But you know, it's become, the legitimacy of the industry's become far more prevalent. I think it is now easier. It's in some regards it's more difficult because there's a lot more saturation. There's a lot more, you know, it'd be harder to start a Man United channel from scratch now because there's so many competitors there. But it's a real thing now. You know, having to explain to your in-laws why you've given up the proper job to do this thing was a very difficult thing for me. I don't know if you've had something similar.
It's just, you know, for years I just don't tell anyone because they're like, it's not an embarrassment. I was just sort of like, you know, some of the jobs I've done, you say I've done that and people are like, oh yeah, and then you go, it's hard to explain, but basically it's all about Manchester United because you're being humble, you know, because you sort of play it down that anyone can do it when actually it's your own hard work and graft and hours that have done it. But you just I play it down with everybody. Oh yeah, I do this. What do you do? Let me move the conversation on.
It's a tough balance between being, because again, some of the things maybe for me it's a scout. I know it's a scouts thing. We don't like to be the big I am doesn't serve you very well.
I'm the same. I'm very bad at praise and dealing with that. It's always on to the next thing.
Yeah, and it is very difficult to be like to upsell what you do, but you don't want to come across like you're like a dickhead. Basically, you don't want to come across like you're tooting your own horn too much. But you're right. There's a temptation to undersell a lot of stuff. But I had it for years where. What do you do? I just go, I do this thing where I talk about Liverpool. Oh, great. Well, they have no idea. They've no concept of what YouTube is. They've no concept of what you think is. They're no interested in football, which makes it even harder.
Yeah, those people.
Well, oh God, honestly, like they're out there and they don't care and they don't care to know. So yeah, that has made it very, very, very difficult down the years, but also more satisfying when people do start to get what it is you do.
I think as well, I mean, I don't know where you sit on this because, you know, speak to a lot of fan channels, a lot of content creators, and I think for some people that it's, you know, going back to what the aspirations are, for some people they think that if they're on the BBC or they're on Sky or BT for 5 minutes, that's making it, that's what it is. And I have done those things more out of curiosity. I spent a day down with Sky on transfer deadline last year, and I actually said to Flex in the car, I'm not coming again. Yeah. And he was like, why? I said, because I've spent 9 hours here to do 10 minutes of content. It's not great. Yeah. And we really enjoyed it. It was, I'd love to do it again. I was like, not for me. Yeah. I don't like this staged produced thing. I want to get in front of the video camera. If I've got a great background, great. And I want to engage with the fans, and I want fan opinion. I don't want, they do it great. That's not me. I'm not an ex-footballer. I'm not a polished presenter. this is what I want. Whereas I think some people want that. Or I think some people don't know what they want. I think they're like, maybe that is their aspiration. Oh, I want the big sort of, I want to be on Sky, and it's like, or Channel 4 or what.
Yeah, no, true, but I think that's, and I think it's admirable. I think there's people who go into it for different reasons, and I can understand if you came into it as a presenter. It's a natural step. If you don't own a channel, then what's the point? You're effectively doing that job just at a different level.
I think that's the mindset. Actually, you've hit the nail on the head there, isn't it? It depends what your aspirations are, but your role in something else is, I suppose, as owners.
But I agree in terms of. Hello. I agree in terms of that the Sky Sports thing. We got an email through. I don't know if you got it ahead of the Liverpool-Manchester United game, and it said, we weren't looking for Liverpool fans, Manchester United fans, for this piece of content. You're going to take a lie detector, and I was like, I'm going to go down. What's the win for me here? I'll be on Sky Sports exposure. That's a win, sure, but they're going to ask me who's the biggest football club. And I'm going to have to either say Liverpool, and it's going to go because I believe that Man United right now are the bigger entity and all that, or I'm going to say Man United, and it's going to go ding, and everyone's going to accuse me of not loving my football club, and because they don't care about my legitimacy. You know, we went to the Facebook Football Awards years ago, and it was the most pandered to thing. It was, and they had Fernando Morientes up on the stage, who couldn't speak 3 words of English, by the way, and they went, and now we're going to speak to the fans. And I think we're gaining more and more legitimacy, but I think these media companies still see it as, let's go over to the fans to say something wacky and have a bit. Ped Toffee TV got absolutely slaughtered off the back of that because he did his Everton have won the transfer window thing, and that gets pulled up every single time they do something wrong.
You know, I'm very passionate about fan opinion. I think it's the life source of football. I think we'll never do it because we're too tribal, but if all the fans from all the clubs just went, we're walking away, Sky and everything shut down, and season ticket prices come down and shirt prices come down. But with the lifeblood, we just don't have the community to do it, which is why the rivalry is so great. But I'm very passionate about it. No matter who anyone supports, you are the most important thing. I don't think mainstream media gets fan content. I don't think they really understand it. And you're right, there are opportunities out there because, Goldbridge, can you come on and sit opposite Expressions and 5 minutes rant war? And it's like, no. Oh, it'd be really good. And I said, I know it will. It'll make me look a bloody idiot. Yeah, but
against Expressions as well.
Yeah. But I like Expressions, and he's very, very, very good with his lines. I mean, I'm not bad either, but it will just turn into the week before we actually will go and script it, and then it's not natural. And also, that's not it. I'm not a worse fan because I've lost a rant war. You know. Yeah. Actually, and also, you're missing a trick here, because if you sat us down together to have a proper conversation about it, people will engage with it a lot more anyway. But
yeah, that's the thing.
I just don't think they get it. That's the thing.
Well, there's an audience. Therefore, I think it's just that unfortunately that audience is dwarfed because you've got.
It's the DT road, actually.
It's DT, it's Troops, it's what was the guy, the Welston Raider. Yeah. You know, because it's something that people want, something that's there, it's quick, and it's something you can point at and laugh at, basically. And that's the thing that is most potentially damaging. So I say it again, the most potentially damaging to what we do and why we try. And I'll be honest, like, you know, we've not reached out to you. I'm not reached out to the United Stand a lot because I just wasn't sure what you guys are meant to be. I wasn't sure what the ethos of what you were, and I know there's a degree to which you know what you're doing, and I can be treated both ways. You know what I mean? I don't think there's a lot of stuff I think there are always happy accidents, but I think there's a lot of stuff that goes out that you're clever enough to know what it is that's going out there, and that's a fine line between someone, and I can understand why people might be standoffish in that regard, because it might feel as though it's something that you are constructing as opposed to something that's being grown.
Yeah, I think, you know, I was thinking there when you're on about DT, because it's always good to, you know, self-reflect, and I think actually people could listen to me there and go, well, look at this clip, look at this clip, look at this clip. But the vast majority of my clips are on a watch-along. Mm-hmm. They're an instant reaction to a goal or a mistake, and I'll probably be 10 times worse in a pub. Yeah, there'd be certainly a lot more language, and having a few minutes after a game. I've done a couple of fan cams this season, actually. I've been to some of the 3:00 games because obviously they're not on the telly in the UK, and I thought, you know, it's nice to get up to a game and see it from a different angle. So I've done a couple of fan cams, and I'm not ranting in them, even though we were managed by Mourinho. It's like, it's pragmatic. It's like, you know what, I've had 20 minutes for that game to end. I've walked down with the fans. I've had times to gather my thoughts. You're not going to get that. But when I'm doing a match and a goal's just gone in, you're gonna get that. But yeah, I not everything is for everybody.
Yeah.
And some people will rightly or wrongly have their own opinion. It's their opinion. What frustrates me is when people gauge an opinion based on lies and manipulation and basically about, don't do that with them because do it with us and that sort of thing. And that can be a frustration which I've probably dealt with all the way through doing this, but only in the last sort of 2 years have I sort of like, yeah, it's not fair, but actually life isn't fair. You just crack on with your own content.
That's the biggest thing. That's my one big bugbear about the whole thing, is that the spreading of lies, and when things that aren't true become true. Then it happens a lot in the Liverpool scene internally. So you maybe get accused of being, whenever things aren't going well, you get accused of being in the club's pocket. Yeah. No one ever mentions that when things are going right, and people look to tear you down on those kind of things. So.
It is that's probably unique to your fan base as well, because people say, why is there infighting? Well, look at any industry. When people are competing, you're going to get infighting, and people deal with it in a different way.
Absolutely. If you had to start it all from scratch again, what are the major pitfalls that you hit that you would be like, right, first and foremost, these are things I'm absolutely going to avoid this time around?
I think it would be to... one bit of advice is, no matter how right you are, you're not going to win an argument on Twitter or social media. You're not. If you start saying they're the bad one because of this, this, and this, you'll either get called sanctimonious, needy, or whatever. So that would be one thing. I would never air your arguments publicly. I mean, the things with me and DT, that's fine, because I think ultimately he's delivering that to himself, and that is banter. But when it's real life things, where you're really, really being aggressive about it, it's not the place to do it. And I think what I said a few minutes ago would be to just try and learn that lesson a little bit sooner, that, just because one or two people are arseholes, don't be an arsehole back to everybody else. Yeah. Because they might get on with those arseholes. That's the big lesson for me, is that there's a lot of people who knew people and liked those people. They were genuinely arseholes and causing problems, but then you dislike everyone around them, and that was a big mistake. And we're coming back from that now, thankfully, but it probably took too long. Going in there and being brash and this is our content and we're going to do it our way, I wouldn't change that, because I think we've benefited from that.
Yeah. You've been surprised by how it's sort of blown up in the last year or so?
I think this
is one of those humble situations, isn't
it? It's always grown. It's always grown in the United Stand, apart from the very, very start. It's always grown at a certain level, and I think whether it was 100 subscribers to 200 or 100,000 to 200,000, actually the graph is gradually the same. I never wanted it to spike. I never wanted it to drop. It's just gradual, so that's good. I didn't ever think we'd get 50,000 subscribers, and our graphics guy, Rorty, would say that. I remember you saying we'll never get 50,000, so every day is a positive with it. I suppose trying my best not to be humble. When you look at it and what it does, it's good content, it's real content, and it engages people. So maybe it's not a surprise. I suppose I'd throw it back and say I'm just really, really proud of the people who watch it and like it, that they actually grabbed onto something, which was the vision. Yeah. Because it is about fans, and the fact that they enjoy it, that's what I'm proudest of.
Yeah. Most, yeah. A few things I have to ask you about. Goldbridge World?
Yeah.
Anything to do with that?
No, I've got my idea of who runs it, but I mean, a lot of people think that's mine, but I'm literally live when those videos are going out. Do I produce it? Do I own anything about it? No.
Do you wish you did?
I have actually thought about just taking the clips and putting them on my Twitter, because I probably would grow a lot more, but because it says Goldbridge World on it, I can't do it, and I'm too lazy to even though I know where those videos are, to just go and clip them and put them up myself. So yeah. I wish it didn't exist and I had them, but I ain't got the time for that.
Yeah. Sandra.
Yeah, this is Liverpool. I mean, this is one of the funniest things, because that is not me, and it can't be me.
Okay.
But so many people believed it was me. So what happened is a tweet goes out, something about BTEC, which is my thing, and I replied and said sorry to this person, didn't mean to cause offence. Then they replied straight after, the minute after, saying the same thing, which makes it look like they're replying to themselves, but there was a tweet and is a tweet where I reply. So I don't understand how people would say why would you do the same thing twice off the same account?
Yeah.
Realistically, it should have been them tweeting it and then them replying to it, but it wasn't. It was them doing it. Then I replied. Then they instantly copied my reply.
Right. So this isn't a tweet deck disaster. Trying to own multiple accounts and conversation.
To be honest, I ain't got time.
But do you see this as a massive compliment? But this is the thing, and this is the aura that's sort of been built around you in the last year. Is no one knows what's real and what's not, because inevitably we live in the era of fake news, and where people will go out the way to make people look like bellends and all that kind of stuff. That it's so unplausible that it's perfectly plausible.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't surprise people if I said it was me, but you know, no. And the funniest thing about that irritated is that actually there was no logic to it. Everyone just jumped on the fact that they replied to their own thing and said, "Oh, he's been caught out." But the middle tweet was actually me replying to it. It's like if I follow Gary Neville and he replies and then I reply and then it doesn't make any sense. But it was something that a lot of people, and again, when you reply to it and say, this can't be true because of this, this and this, they don't want to listen to that anyway. You just have to, with that, I actually retracted very quickly and went, just let it run its course, because it's not me, it's a load of bollocks. And actually some of the things that account was tweeting as well. yeah, you know. So yeah, those things can be quite frustrating.
Because that's not something that you can be prepared for when you're entering a world of just talking on YouTube.
No.
If you could change one thing about this industry, or if you had control how this industry moves forward, the Mark Goldbridge version of football, of the football fan universe, what would you do and what would you jettison?
Is that just football fan, or is that in like BT and Sky and everything?
This let's just say, the keep it to the world we're doing. You know, it's largely YouTube centric, but the offshoots they're of it. We're in a world now where most of the big clubs have got their own fan channels. They're all getting bigger. They're all gaining notoriety for one reason or another. If you were to take charge of this whole scene and steer it in a direction, what would that look like?
So you know what, I mean, it's only off the top of my head because I've never really thought about it, but there are some themes that I have thought about. I would love every football club in the Premier League certainly to have their own fan channel. I would love to be able to pick up a phone and say, we're playing it at the weekend, and come and do something like this. I'd love that. And I would like, as a shoot off of that, I'd like there to be some sort of union in some ways where we meet up maybe 3 times a season and talk about things, because I think where issues start is when, you know, you do get those little bit of conflicts and everything like that. And you're right, what you're saying, there are things that reflect badly. I mean, I was talking about this with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and there are certain things that some fan channels have done, and I think, you know what, they might not have listened, but actually if they'd spoken to another couple of channels, they might have gone, I wouldn't do this, not because you think it's a great opportunity, but actually what is it doing for what we're doing? Because we all do have that responsibility. Ultimately we've got the independence, but I do think that I'd like to see more of them, probably more in the vein of what we're doing, where they are independent, and that, you know, that there is that fan's voice. And I would like to see, you know, a little bit more responsibility about the platform that everybody else has built. I mean, you were the forerunners, IFTV as well. So that's what I'd like to see. I really do value it. I just have a vision of how I think it should be.
I think we all have something along those lines. And just kind of lastly, did you ever foresee that this was what your life would become? For those 5 years ago now, sat on your lilo?
No, I didn't. I mean, my dream was always to be a footballer, and obviously I really thought that was going to happen, and it didn't for various reasons. So I think this is it's a distant second, but it is, you know, I'm not going to lie, it's great. It's absolutely great to be able to spend a lot of your life talking about the thing that you're really passionate about, and, you know, long may it continue.
Perfect. Mark, Brent,
cheers, mate. Thanks, pal.
Nice one, mate.